We as the Jewish people are now officially in the 3 weeks of mourning, which is a period of mourning that starts from the 17th of Tammuz, which is the fast of Tammuz, until the 9th of Av, which is the fast of Tisha B'Av. And the reason that we observe certain restrictions during these 3 weeks is to illustrate that the destruction of both the first and the second temple of the Jewish people in Jerusalem all started on the events of the 17th of Tammuz. And I've already made a video about the 17th of Tammuz, which I will link for you above. But in this video, we are going to cover the 3 weeks. I also thought it would be a little bit easier if we break up what happens during the 3 weeks. Because within the 3 weeks, there's actually 3 periods of restrictions, where different restrictions apply depending on when it is. The period of mourning, or the 3 weeks in Judaism, starts on the 17th of Tammuz. But it's more lenient from the 17th of Tammuz until Rosh Chodesh Av, which is the beginning of the month of Av. From the month of Av until Tisha B'Av, the 9th day of Av, the restrictions is more severe. And there's many additional restrictions that kick in. Also, the week in which Tisha B'Av falls. So the Jewish week starts on Motzei Shabbos, after there's 3 medium stars after Shabbat, which is basically Saturday evening. So if Tisha B'Av falls in the week from Saturday evening, then there is additional restrictions that apply. Also, there's a last and final layer of restrictions from Zayin B'Av, which is the 7th day of Av, until Tisha B'Av. And the reason for this is because the idol worshippers, the non-Jews, entered the holy sanctuary of our temple in Jerusalem on the 7th of Av. And that is why the restrictions then is very severe. So what we're going to do in this video is I'm going to give you all the laws, all the restrictions that applies during the period from the 17th of Tammuz until Tisha B'Av, the 9th of Av. But we're mainly going to deal in this video from the 17th of Tammuz until Rosh Chodesh Av. And then I'll make a separate video about what we call in Judaism the 9 days, which is from Rosh Chodesh Av until Tisha B'Av. And obviously, any restrictions that we are going to mention in this video will also apply to the last 9 days. But many of the leniencies that I will give for you in this video will not apply in the last 9 days. And again, we're going to learn all of this out from the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, which was written by Rabbi Gansfried, with the commentary of the Mishnah Brura, which was the Chofetz Chaim, as well as Igros Moshe from Moshe Feinstein Zatzal. And if you are someone brand new to this channel, I make videos about Judaism, converting to Judaism, and Israel. So if that is a subject that interests you, you can hit the subscribe button below and press the bell notification button below for when I do upload a new video. Also, for everyone watching this video, if you found some benefit from this video, give this video a like so that it will reach a wider audience. So the very first thing that the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch mentions is a God-fearing person should perform Tikkun Chatsot. Now, Tikkun Chatsot literally means the repair of Chatsot, of the half. And this is a collection of prayers that people say, many pious people, righteous people, it is more common amongst the Hasidim that they say to mourn the destruction of the temple, because we are commanded to mourn for our temple that has been destroyed. Please God, it will soon be rebuilt. We also include it in our prayers. 3 times a day, Jews pray for the rebuilding of our temple in Jerusalem. Please God, God should hear our prayers and soon rebuild the 3rd and the final Jewish temple in Jerusalem. And if that does happen before Tisha B'Av, then Baruch Hashem, blessed be God, then none of this, what I'm telling you, will apply. So let's hope that happens. Now this Tikkun Chatsot, which is this selection of certain prayers that is said about the destruction of the temple, this is normally from midnight and a little bit onwards. But what the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch is adding here is that in the 3 weeks, people that is God-fearing, very pious people, they should do it also in the day. It says in Hebrew, Lachar Chatsot Hayoim. So in the actual midday, and the day in Judaism is from daybreak until there is 3 medium stars. So from Alot HaShachar until Tzeit Kochavim in Hebrew. And thus in the winter months, the day is shorter, and in the summer months, a day is longer. So you should work out where Chatsot is, the middle of the day. Jews have calendars today that tells us exactly when it is Chatsot, so you can consult the calendar. There's also apps, Zimanim, it's called. Zimanim means times, where you can check exactly when it is Chatsot. Also, during these 3 weeks of mourning, we do not get married, because obviously when you get married, it's a day of joy. And in this 3 weeks, we observe a period of mourning. That is what many of these restrictions have in common, is that we should feel from Yud Zayin B'Tammuz, from the 17th of Tammuz at Tisha B'Av until the 9th of Av, we should be feeling a sense of mourning, a sense of sadness of what we have lost. And please God, it should soon be restored. The Kitzur Shulchan Aruch also adds that this applies, this restriction of not getting married, even to someone that has not yet fulfilled his obligation of pru urvu, of being fruitful and multiplying, which is one of the first commandments that the God gives in the Torah. Now, what exactly is pru urvu in Judaism? What does it mean, being fruitful and multiply? By most opinions, it means that you need to have both a boy and a girl. And it also means that this boy must have a boy and a girl, and the girl must have a boy and a girl. But the best you can do is to get a boy and a girl. So, b'kitzur, in short, you should get married before the 17th of Tammuz. And if not, you're going to have to wait until after the 3 weeks for you to get married. And then the question is, but can you get engaged? So in Judaism, there was 2 stages to marriage. It's still the same today. Now we're just doing it all on the same day. But in the past, you used to get engaged, and then only a year after, you would live together. Now, this engagement is not like getting engaged in maybe secular circles. If you get engaged in the old times, which was the first part of getting married, and you were found to be cheating, then this is full adultery. But the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch tells us here that you are permitted to get engaged, and normally when you have this engagement, you also have a little bit of a feast. So that's not normally in line were the 3 weeks where we show that we are mourning. But because the engagement is permitted, then also the feast is permitted. But this is only until Rosh Chodesh Av. So you should make sure if you're going to get engaged, do it before Rosh Chodesh Av. The Mishnah Brura adds to this point where we just said you can get engaged in the 3 weeks. It is permitted. You can have a feast. So you can have a good meal, meat, wine, everything. But the Mishnah Brura, who is the Chofetz Chaim, adds that in this 3 weeks, even if you get engaged and you have this small party, there should be no dancing. Dancing is prohibited in the 3 weeks. And like we've already said, you can't get married in the 3 weeks. And the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch is also adding here that you could get engaged from Rosh Chodesh Av until Tisha B'Av, but then you can't have this celebratory meal with meat and wine. Most of the Jewish celebrations, if it's a joyous day, it's normally accompanied by wine and meat, where if you were to get engaged between Rosh Chodesh Av and Tisha B'Av, then you can't have meat and wine. And again, we'll discuss that in a future video, the next video, so stay tuned for that. Now, what about music in the 3 weeks? So in the 3 weeks, we do not listen to music. And by listening to music in halakha, it means actually being at a live event, meaning you are there in person and you are hearing the person singing and playing instruments, which then obviously can bring you into a state of joy. And within the 3 weeks, we should observe these restrictions to remind us that we are in a period of mourning. You can, however, by some opinions, listen to a cappella, which is music without musical instruments, basically people singing. There is a leniency for this in Judaism. But what if you are a Jewish person and you are a musician, meaning you make money? The way you make a living, the way you pay your bills is because you play guitar or you play piano. How then do you go about these 3 weeks? So the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch says that this Jew that makes his livelihood, this is very important, through playing musical instruments, may play music for non-Jews, because this is the way that he earns a living. And obviously the Torah and Jewish law is sensitive to this because, people need to live. Rabbi Moshe Feinstein adds in here, since we're dealing with the music like we just discussed, that it is forbidden to listen to music even over the radio during the 3 weeks. So not to play music through an electronic device, as this is also considered music. He's also adding in that a child that has reached the age of chinuch, which we discussed a little bit in the previous video about the 17th of Tammuz, but the child is generally a Jewish child, is generally trained in the mitzvot starting at the age of 7 or 8. And at this age, you should also start to train the kids not to listen to music. Now, we're dealing with this Jew that makes his livelihood for playing music. Now, we said that it is allowed to play music for a non-Jew during the 3 weeks. But again, we're talking now from Yud Zayin B'Tammuz, from the 17th of Tammuz, until Rosh Chodesh Av. From Rosh Chodesh Av until Tisha B'Av, it is not allowed even to play music for a non-Jew. So for that 9 days, this musician must take a holiday. The next restriction that we're going to discuss is meat and wine. Like I said, in Judaism, whenever there's a celebration, it is normally accompanied by wine and meat. So the Kisur Shulchan Aruch says that some have the custom not to eat meat or drink wine from the 17th of Tammuz until Tisha B'Av, except on Shabbos or at a mitzvah feast. Like, let's say, for example, circumcision, which happens on the 8th day after the baby boy was born, or at a Pidyon HaBen, where the baby is redeemed from the Kohanim, because firstborns belongs to the temple, and the father of the child must redeem his child from the Kohanim by giving him 5 silver coins. I have done this with my son, who's also Bachur, Azriel, and if you have such a mitzvah occasion, meaning that something that the Torah told you to do, and it falls during this 3 weeks, then you are allowed to have meat and wine at this celebratory meal that you are having. Now, this custom that he mentions from Yud Zayin B'Tammuz at Tisha B'Av, from the 17th of Tammuz until Tisha B'Av, is not a very predominant custom. The main custom, which is from the Ashkenazim, is that you don't have any meat or wine from Rosh Chodesh Av until Tisha B'Av. The Sephardim don't have meat or wine in the week in which Tisha B'Av falls. And again, like the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch mentioned, Shabbos is obviously excluded from this restriction. So for Ashkenazim, for example, one Shabbos will fall from Rosh Chodesh Av until Tisha B'Av. And then in that Shabbos we can have meat and wine as per normal. The rest of those 9 days, Ashkenazim have milchik dishes or parava dishes with fish. But meat in Judaism is a red meat and also includes, chicken. So both you can't have from Rosh Chodesh Av until Tisha B'Av for Ashkenazim, and for the Sephardim, they can't have it in the week which Tisha B'Av falls. Another restriction is that in the 3 weeks, we don't say the Shecheyanu blessing. Now, the Shecheyanu blessing is something we say when either we bought new clothing of significant value, shoes of significant value, a house, a car, or we eating a new fruit for the first time in its season. And we also say this, many of you would know, Shecheyanu, from the festivals. And basically, we are thanking God with His blessing for bringing us to this particular event, season, and since we are in the 3 weeks, which is a period of mourning, it's not appropriate to be overly joyous. And we normally say Shecheyanu because we are very happy. Also, to remove the suffix, to remove the doubt, we don't buy new items that would invoke the Shecheyanu bracha, that would make us to say the blessing of Shecheyanu. So we don't wear new garments or new shoes or all the items that I have already listed. So what is the exception for this case is the mitzvah feast that I've mentioned, like a Pidyon HaBen, circumcision, where we also say Shecheyanu, because God brought us to the season, because it is a mitzvah, it is a commandment of God to do circumcision, and it's also a commandment to redeem your son, your firstborn son. Then, like we said earlier, you can have this feast with meat and wine, and you can also say the Shecheyanu bracha. Now, what about new fruit? We said if you eat new fruit that you haven't eaten and the season has arrived for this fruit, then we do say Shecheyanu. But during the 3 weeks, we said we can't say the Shecheyanu bracha. But what about fruit? And the reason he's singling out fruit is because if you have new clothes, new shoes, new car, new house, then you could delay the Shecheyanu bracha until after Tisha B'Av, after the 3 weeks of mourning is over. But if you do the same thing with fruit, the fruit will be spoiled after 3 weeks. So what exactly do you do in that case? So the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch says that you say the Shecheyanu bracha of this new fruit on Shabbos. And if this fruit, let's say you get this fruit on Sunday, now Shabbos is only on Saturday, and you think the fruit will go off by the time you get to Shabbos, then you can say the Shecheyanu bracha. Now, obviously, this only applies if you won't find that same fruit after Tisha B'Av, after the 9th day of Av. Obviously, if you can get the fruit after Tisha B'Av, then you should wait until after Tisha B'Av, get yourself that new fruit in the new season, and then you can say Shecheyanu mikol halev, with all your heart. That would be the better thing to do. Another restriction that applies, that many people hold all year round, is that a teacher shouldn't hit his student, nor should a parent hit his child during these days. So from that you can also learn that it is allowed in Judaism to punish your children. This is actually written in the Torah itself, but many rabbis today would tell you that it's better not to hit your children and rather to draw them closer to you and closer to Judaism with bundles of love. Now, I come from a culture where corporal punishment was very common. It was done in schools, it was done in homes, and that's how I grew up, Baruch Hashem, and I'm okay. I don't feel like I was abused. I feel like I was educated. And I always thought that when I have kids, I will do the same with my kids. I will raise them in a similar style. Many people know that Afrikaans people are very disciplined, very well-mannered, hard workers, and this all comes from the way we are educated. And before I had kids, I learned a lot about how to raise children, what's the best way to do, and what you should and should not do. And one of the things, and I discussed this obviously a lot with my Rabbi Yitzchak Steinberg, and he said it is allowed in Judaism to hit your children, obviously not too hard, but he said there is one thing that you must remember if you are going to do it, and that is that you can't do it while you are angry. Meaning you must have completely cooled off, and then only can you hit your child. And the whole reason for corporal punishment is to correct the child's behavior. You shouldn't be hitting your child because you are angry, upset, or frustrated. This is not what the Torah told us to do. And to my surprise, I think I've only hit my oldest son, Azrael, I think only twice. The one time is because he hit me. It's against the Torah law for a child to hit his parent. And the other time was because he hit my second son, Hillel, and he actually flew like a meter and hit the wall. And for that also he got a hiding. And what the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch is telling us, that during this 3 weeks, this should be avoided. Because in this 3 weeks, we don't have mazal, meaning we don't have a lot of protection. It's a bad time for the Jewish people. And God forbid something bad can happen. The next restriction in the 3 weeks is that we do not take haircuts, neither the hair of the head nor the hair of the beard. Meaning you don't cut your hair or you do not trim your beard. And this in general is a sign for Jews, a sign of mourning. Like we have when we count the Omer, which starts from the second day of Pesach until Lag BaOmer. And this is the reason we don't cut our hair or trim our beards during that time, is because of the death of Rabbi Akiva's students. So similar here, because we are in a mourning period, this is also a similar custom that Jews do when, lo aleinu, God forbid, one of your parents die, then you also don't cut your hair, you don't trim your beard. So we also don't do it during these 3 weeks. Now, what happens if you work in a place or in your profession where if you are not neatly trimmed, especially your beard, then there will be some financial loss. Then Rabbi Moshe Feinstein Zatzal says, then you are allowed to shave so that you won't lose your income, but you can only shave until the week in which Tisha B'Av falls. So that's how Rav Moshe rules. But he's also adding here that if you are not going to have any financial loss, then you can't shave, obviously. So for example, I live in Israel. People know that it's the 3 weeks. People know many of the customs. So even though generally, you should look neat, I work for the government, you can most certainly leave your hair and your beard unshaven. I think it will take me years before I grow a beard, so I don't really have that problem. But for those that do, that is the restrictions and also the leniency that applies. The Kitzur Shulchan Aruch goes on to say that you can also not cut any hair of your body during this 3 weeks. And it's similarly prohibited for adults to cut the hair of their children. Now, Rabbi Moshe Feinstein, as well as the Mishnah Brura, the Chofetz Chaim, adds here, when we're talking now about cutting bodily hair, like shaving bodily hair, as well as haircuts for women, both Rabbi Moshe Feinstein as well as the Mishnah Brura are saying that it's proper for women to be stringent and refrain from haircuts during the 3 weeks. And that language normally means that it's better not to do it, but you can do it in the 3 weeks. But during the week in which Tisha B'Av falls, it is forbidden for women as well. Rabbi Moshe Feinstein Zatzal is adding, a woman who is married or of marriageable age may shave her legs even during this time. And I have discussed this with my rabbi before, a Shayel that my wife asked. And the reason that there's more leniencies in the 3 weeks for women with cutting hair, trimming bodily hair, is because for a woman, it's very important to look beautiful for herself and also for her husband. And this would cause her much distress, much pain. If she can't, she will feel inadequate. And that is why many of these leniencies applies towards women, which is not the same for men. Now, this last section that the Shulchan Aruch mentions, Rabbi Gansfried, where he says it's prohibited for adults to cut the hair of children, the Mishnah Brura says that it is permitted to cut a child's hair, if necessary, until the week of Tisha B'Av. So then, according to us, the Ashkenazim, it will most certainly be allowed. Now, what about a mustache? So we've already talked about cutting hair, and we've talked about trimming the beard. We said you can't cut your hair in the 3 weeks. We said you shouldn't trim your beard, but if you're going to lose your job or just suffer some financial loss, then there is a leniency to trim your beard, but not in the week in which Tisha B'Av falls. Now, what about the mustache? What would be different about that? Well, if it grows pretty thick and pretty long, this actually happens to me, then it could interfere with your eating. Like you can look dirty and a little bit unkept. So then, when it does interfere with your eating, the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, Rabbi Gansfried is saying, it appears to me that it is permitted to trim it. And because the language is a little bit unique, I'll put it in Hebrew. Nireli the yesh la hatir la galchu, until the week in which Tisha B'Av falls. But during the week in which Tisha B'Av falls, one should be stringent in this regard and prohibit this. Now, interestingly here, the Shulchan Aruch in 551:13 permits the trimming of a mustache even during the week in which Tisha B'Av falls, when it interferes with eating. What we learn from here is that you can trim your mustache, definitely until the week in which Tisha B'Av falls, and then there's a little bit of a machloket, a little bit of discussion, what happens in the week of Tisha B'Av. So according to Rabbi Gansfried, who wrote the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, from his understanding it would not be permitted, but from the Shulchan Aruch itself, it seems it would be permitted. Like we said earlier, in the 3 weeks the Jewish people is in the mourning period. Normally mourners don't cut their hair, they don't cut their beards, and they don't trim their nails. But here the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch is giving us a leniency, and he's saying we do not prohibit cutting nails. Meaning you can cut your nails, but you can't do it during the week in which Tisha B'Av falls. Now, what if you are a woman and you have just finished your period of Nidar, again, which we've talked a little bit about in the previous video about the 17th of Tammuz. When a woman's cycle starts, she goes into a period of Nidar, meaning that she's ritually unclean. And then, I'm not going to go into too much detail, but then eventually she counts the days, and when she's clean, ritually, then she goes into a mikveh, which is a ritual bath, and then she can again be with her husband. So what happens to a woman that becomes clean ritually and now needs to go to the mikveh? But it is in the week in which Tisha B'Av falls. Because like we just learned, like Gansfried said, wrote the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, that we can trim our nails in the 3 weeks, but only until the week in which Tisha B'Av falls. Now this lady needs to go to the mikveh in the week that Tisha B'Av falls. Then he states that she may most certainly do so. He's also saying that a moel, the person that does the circumcision, he may also trim his nails in the week in which Tisha B'Av falls, and this helps him to do all the procedures that he needs to do during circumcision, and we're not going to go in too much detail into that. And the last section that the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch deals with in the laws of the 3 weeks, before he gets to the laws of the 9 days, which we will do B'ezrat Hashem in the next video, is it deals with the 3 Shabbatot that we have between Yud Zayin B'Tammuz and Tisha B'Av, and they're telling us which Haftorahs we will read. Jews read a section of the Torah every single week, the Parasha HaShavua, the section of the Torah of the week, and in this way we complete the entire Torah in a year's period. It's actually a mitzvah called Shnei Mikrei, that Jews must read the section of the Torah each week twice in Hebrew, and one with Onkelos, who was a Jewish convert that lived 2,000 years ago, and his translation is in Aramaic. Most people say you can also use Rashi mainly, or any other Rishon commentary to understand actually what the Torah means. There was a time period in Jewish history, and this happened quite a few times, where the Jewish people were banned from learning the Torah, because the non-Jews knows that the Jewish strength comes from learning God's word, which is the Torah. And that has banned us from studying the Torah. A very good time to remember this, since we are now in the 3 weeks of mourning. So what did the rabbis do? They took sections out of Nach, which is the Nevi'im and the Ketuvim, the prophets and the writings, and this became the Haftorah, which then reminds us, because the story is very similar. When you read the Haftorah, you'll see that it's very similar to the actual parasha, or parasha Shavua, a section of the Torah that we read each week. And that way it will allow Jews still to learn the Torah, even though we are prohibited by the non-Jews from doing so. And during this 3 weeks, we have special Haftorahs, which we learn and read, which has to do with this period, this 3 weeks that we are in. And I'm not going to go into detail about that. You can find it in your Chumash, and the Chumash at the end of the parasha will tell you exactly where to go, and it will also tell you that if you are in the 3 weeks, which Haftorah to read. And that is basically all the restrictions and the leniencies that we have from Yud Zayin Tammuz at Rosh Chodesh Av, from the 17th of Tammuz until the new month of Av. And like I said in my next video, I will talk about all the restrictions of the 9 days, as we call it in Judaism, which is from Rosh Chodesh Av until Tisha B'Av. So if you do want to be notified when I do make that video, then remember to click on the subscribe button below. Also click on the bell notification button. And if you did benefit from this video, give it a like so that more people will benefit from it. And if you do want to learn about all the restrictions that apply on the 9 days, as we call it in Judaism, then you can click on this video next. Thank you all for watching, and Tzorot Tovot.